discussed on this podcast are determined by the Justice Coordinating Commission of the Sisters of Providence of St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana. Guest opinions do not necessarily reflect those of the Sisters of Providence. To learn more, go to www.spsmw.org.
Welcome to Just Us, where we talk about creating an equitable human community and influencing change. Through shared stories, conversation, and inspiration, you will learn how you can make a difference in your community. I am your host, Jane Fisher, and I'm also a Providence associate. Motivated by our guests' experiences and insights, let's take action for the common good. If not now, tell me when. In today's episode, I would like to introduce our guest, Dr. Mary Hums of the University of Louisville, who is joining us in this shared space to discuss sports and human rights. That topic of sports and human rights caused me to look at those words more than once. But by the time Dr. Mary is finished talking with us, you will have a new appreciation of sports and human rights and how they go or should go together. And you will hear her rallying cry, inform, empower, and transform. Got that? Because that's where Mary is going to take us today. To begin, though, we know that she has worked as a volunteer for the 1996 Summer Paralympic Games in Atlanta. In 2004, she lived in Athens, Greece, working both the Olympic and Paralympic Games. In 2002, she was with the Winter Paralympics in Salt Lake City. In 2006, she was selected by the U.S. Olympic Committee to represent the U.S. on the International Olympic Academy Educators Session in Greece. Wow, in 2008, you were an Erasmus Mundus Visiting International Scholar at the Catholic University in Belgium. In 2010, you were at the Winter Paralympic Games in Vancouver, and you were the Guinness Lecture Scholar in Illinois State University in 2010, and the Dorothy Dries Scholar Lecturer at the University of Dayton in 2011. Mary, can you tell us about this academic journey of yours and what motivated you to be such an advocate for human rights in sports?
Well, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to be with us this morning and share some of my thoughts. Well, I've always, I was an athlete all my life, and as a young person, and that led me into knowing that I couldn't play all my life, and that I would need to be working on the administrative side. And so I had the opportunity to do that. I became an athletic director right there at St. Mary of the Woods College. And I think I was actually I may have been the very first athletic director that St. Mary of the Woods College had. And during my time there, one of the things that happened was I always give this personal story background as to how I got started with working with sport for people with disabilities. I was working there and was working with a colleague, Sister Wendy Workman, and unfortunately we were involved in a bicycle accident, and Sister Wendy was pretty severely disabled after that accident. But she was a sports person, and I used to go and visit her as she was in her rehabilitation, and she was in a coma for a long time and just coming out of that. But I bought this squishy soccer ball, like you'd give a little kid, and I would bring it with me when I would visit. And I would say, Wendy, you want to play catch? Now, she couldn't do a whole lot yet, but I would pass the soccer ball, and I would go back and visit her. When I would get that soccer ball out, her eyes would light up, you see, because sport was in there. Sport was so much a part of her, wasn't it? And so I really in that saw the power of sport. All right, saw the power of sport, and particularly with people with disabilities. So I then began my journey of working with sport for people with disabilities. And at that point in time, I was in the able-bodied community. I have now acquired an adult onset disability, so I'm now in the disability community as well. So I've lived in both of those. But I had the opportunity to begin working with an advocacy group out of Boston, led by Mr. Eli Wolf, and who was a Paralympic athlete and a big advocate for sport for people with disabilities. That then moved us into the area of sport for human rights because we saw that people with with disabilities certainly are oftentimes denied opportunities or not given opportunities to participate in general society and then in sport in particular because that was my area. So it kind of took off from there. And so I was able to be involved in a number of national and international projects that advocated again mostly with sport for people with disabilities, but obviously that was a part of the greater human rights conversation because people
Mhm.
with disabilities again oftentimes experience a lack of access to human rights in general, not just in sport but in general, and we see that worldwide.
Tell me how sports management gets intertwined. What's the junction with human rights and sports management? And kind of introduce us to sports management along the way, if you could.
Okay. So sport management is, first of all, I'll tell you what sport management is not. Well, it is the business side of sport and the leadership and management side of sport, but it's not the training athlete side. So we don't, in sport management, we're not training athletes like how to be faster runners or how to have a better jump shot. We're running the games that the athletes are playing. Okay. So we're on the management side, and it can be from anywhere from someone who's working, well, I don't know, as the athletic director for your program right there at St. Mary of the Woods College, okay? Or could be somebody who is a marketing director for the Chicago Bears, or
Mhm.
someone who works at a YMCA and runs programming there. So it's management, but it's not just elite sport. It can be grassroots and community level sport as well. So that's kind of what sport management is. And of course, then as sport managers, we are responsible for what happens in our organizations and with the people that we serve, because as sport managers, we should be servants after all, the people that we serve. And that's where the human rights issue comes in. Are we treating everyone equitably? Are we treating everyone fairly? Do people have access to sport? And the practice of sport is a human right after all. We might not think of it, and maybe you've never thought of that because we think of sport as perhaps trivial or it's just sort of something people do for fun. But it really is something that makes us more fully human. And as sport managers, we have the opportunity to create organizations that can promote opportunities for all.
When you say sport makes us more fully human, can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Sport, it's kind of like art. It's kind of like art and music. And think about how art and music allows us to express ourselves. But sport allows us to express ourselves as well. And again, whether it's just whether you're out on taking a walk, sport and physical activity, I should say, whether you're taking a walk in the forest and enjoying the birds and everything that's out, that's physical activity, isn't it? Whether it's playing pickleball with your friends, or whether if you're an elite athlete and you're an Olympian or a Paralympian, it can take all those different levels. But what it does is it allows us to express who we are similar in a way to what I would say art or music does. And I teach sport management. I teach it, like say at the University of Louisville, have a number of athletes in class. And when we talk about this area, I ask them, have you ever been injured as an athlete? And they say yes. And I said, well, when you were injured, you couldn't play. How did you feel? Well, of course, they felt awful. Part of me was gone. I wasn't myself. And how did you feel when you were able to have sport back? I felt like I was 100% again. I felt like I was myself. So I think that it does make us more fully human.
Yes, and it's not just for those trained athletes. The
Oh,
rest of us who are not trained athletes, when
yeah,
we're sedentary and
that's right. That's right. That's why I say it's all different levels, from community-based to elite. Um,
Mhm.
and of course, it's sort of like a triangle. The biggest part of the triangle is at the bottom, and that's your community-based sport and local-based sport, just sport and physical. And I say sport and physical activity because that
Mhm.
helps, whether it's again walking, biking, going for swimming. it allows us to become more healthy as well.
Yes. And it's play, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't even have to be organized. I mean, you don't have to have a coach and someone leading. It can be participant led. And,
Mm-hmm.
just about think about, when you were kids and you went out and you played whatever space you had. You played with whatever equipment you had. If you didn't have a ball, maybe you found a sock and you wrapped it up with tape, and you hit
Mm-hmm.
it with a stick if you wanted to play whatever, you played baseball or soccer. And you sort of, well, we've only got five kids. How are we going to make this? And you made it work, right? You
Mm-hmm.
figured it out.
Yes.
And it also then engendered a level of creativity, I think, as well, that we can do that we can experience through sport that we can't in other ways.
And sport can be, well, there are things called these mega sports, okay, like the Olympics.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot that happens behind the scenes of the Olympics that we don't know about, like the impact on the cities where they're hosted.
Yes. Yes. There's a great, it's always a big discussion about what impact bringing what we call a mega sporting event that would be like the Olympic Games or the Paralympic Games or the World Cup in soccer. There are
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, as you say, some of which are pretty, some of which are not. And that is where a discussion of human rights also comes in. Uh, there's always the question about what's the economic impact on a city when, let's say, an Olympic and Paralympic Games come to town. And yes, there is some, but there's also, when facilities have to be built or transportation has to be upgraded, people get displaced. And so there's displacement of individuals. And that certainly is that can be a human rights consideration there as well, where you're asking, or not even asking, you're telling people you have to relocate because where you live, and particularly we saw this in Rio in 2016 with the favelas, where so many people were moved around. But we've seen it in London, we've seen it in other spots as well, where people are basically sort of forcibly removed. And that's a human rights violation because people should
Mm-hmm.
have the opportunity to live freely where their home and their heart is.
Mm-hmm.
So we see that. We also sometimes see, well, we do see in upticks in human trafficking that happen around these major sporting events as well because of the influx of tourism that goes along with it. And that wouldn't just be a sporting event, but other major events that would come to a city. So we have to be aware of those as well, just to know that it's going on and shed light on that uh, to know that there's two sides to everything. There's lots of positives, but there's lots of
Yes.
issues that go on as well.
And the athletes themselves
Mhm.
become very active about human rights. For
They do.
example, go
Please.
ahead.
No, no, I was going to say, go ahead.
My example was when they took a knee during the national anthem here at a football game. And the reaction to that was amazing. And I thought, when did kneeling become a bad thing? But
Yeah.
talk about the athletes and what that took for them.
Well, of course, for athletes, athletes have a platform that you and I do not. Let's face it. They have in a national, sometimes an international platform where people look up to them, particularly young people look up to them. So they have the opportunity, if they so choose, to make statements that would support positive social change and issues like racism and sexism, ableism, which is, of course, discrimination against people with disabilities. But they have and political statements as well. They have an opportunity to do that because of their visibility. So we saw Colin Kaepernick, for example, leading that charge when he did, take the knee with an NFL. He was an NFL quarterback. Megan Rapinoe with the United States women's national soccer team doing the same thing. Or sometimes you'll see, athletes certainly supported Black Lives Matter and continue to do so. But it's because athletes have the opportunity. And what this shows is another element of sport and human rights. I mentioned before that sport is the practice of sport is a human right. But sport can also be used to promote human rights. And because athletes have that platform, they can do so. And that's what we see, which is exactly what you're talking about when Kaepernick took a knee, was he was using sport to promote human rights.
I was surprised too, Mary, that the United Nations is involved in this.
Mhm.
Amnesty International is involved in this. The Olympic Charter, I opened that up.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. And I found the word disability in there twice, but it was about if the chair, some high executive became sick or disabled.
Yeah.
And the other time it was about what was going to happen if, again, a person was impacted by some disability. But it was on the committee members that they were
Right.
referring to. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that document, what you know in your experience.
Yeah. So the document is called the Olympic Charter. And the Olympic Charter is what they would actually call the supreme governing document of the Olympic movement. So within there, it's if you want to think in some ways, it's almost like a constitution and bylaws for the Olympic movement. But it does include at the very beginning a section that's called the Principles of Olympism. And within the Principles of Olympism, there's Principle 6, which addresses discrimination and non-discrimination. And that also mentions that the practice of sport is a human right. So that's actually in there. But in Principle 6, that mentions that people should not be discriminated against in the practice of sport, it mentions things like by gender, nationality, race, religion, age, but disability is not listed in there. And that to me is a grave omission. And it is something that there's an ongoing process. And let me tell you, trying to work with the IOC, it's like it's a behemoth. You really have to figure out how to navigate. It's a political morass. I mean, it really is. So trying to navigate that, but there's an ongoing effort, I would say that I've been involved in to try to get the word disability added to the Olympic Charter, because you know there are Olympic athletes who have. There, of course, are Paralympians, but there are Olympic athletes who have disabilities, and you also have to remember that the principles of Olympism and the Olympic Charter don't, it's not just about the Olympic Games. Olympism is a way of life. It's a philosophy that permeates sport and physical activity at all levels. And so people with disabilities should be able to see themselves in that document and know that whether you're a young person, or just someone who wants to have some sort of fun activity, physical activity, or an elite athlete, you should have access and you should be represented. Hey, the word's not in there. Let's face it. The language that we use shapes the image of the world in which we live. Whether that language is present or whether that language is omitted makes a statement. And so representation is very important and language is so very, very important. I get kind of fired up about that, don't I?
Yeah, you remind me of a professor I had in a linguistics class who said language is everything.
It is, because it is.
Mhm.
Absolutely, it is. Whatever language you speak or understand, or languages that you understand and speak, yes, that's very true.
And for those of us, those listening, you'll be going to our newsletter later, we hope. There will be a link to this place, this organization called the Center for Sports and Human Rights in Switzerland. And
Uh,
they have this huge glossary
yeah,
of terms. We talked about this in the background of words associated with human rights and sports. And it's an ongoing document that they're working on.
yes,
And,
yes, it is. And then the center does some really, really great work.
mhm.
It just has so many international connections. And that's a place where people go to their website, to their information. They have events, online events and in-person events as well. And it's a great organization.
The first word I found in that glossary was ableism, and that's one of the first words you mentioned here too.
Yeah.
The ill treatment of people with disabilities.
Yes. We're so used to hearing the isms like sexism and racism. We're so used to those. But people with disabilities, so often we are overlooked, or
Mhm,
we're kind of a throw in. Oh, and then there's a person with a wheelchair. What do we do? You know,
mhm,
that we often are overlooked. So we have to get that notion of ableism out there in front of people. Um, and
mhm.
and one thing I will say about something that happened there at St. Mary of the Woods, if I may, and I spoke with, I think I mostly dealt with Sister Dawn Tomaszewski on this one. If you go over to the shrine, right, on the ground,
Yes,
and if next time you go to the shrine, notice the icon. You know how we have the icon for the blue icon, like don't park, don't
yeah,
park here at the disability
right,
spot.
right.
Um, and the person is very stiff, very, very stiff. But if
Ah,
you go and look, they use what was called the accessible icon. And I spoke with her about this and we got that going. You will see a different icon that looks like a person in motion.
oh,
And we might say that's so small, but no, it's not because it's an image, right? It's an image that denotes motion and mobility and ability,
right,
as opposed to
right.
that little stick figure in the chair. Come on,
Hmm.
man. I mean, I get it. People recognize it, but
Yes,
it's such a subtle difference. But
yes,
it's called the accessible icon, and it's a project that's been going on as well, trying to get that put in like at parking spaces. And so anyway,
yes.
next time have a look.
Okay,
Anybody
I'm
who
going to write that
visits,
down.
yeah, visits the shrine.
The accessible icon.
Yeah.
In addition to that icon, could you tell us that story about the little boy who couldn't get up the steps?
Yeah, I thought this was it was so simple but so powerful. And it was a drawing, so it was a cartoon. And
Okay.
it's little kids, and they're in front of a school. And it's snowing, so there's all the snow piled out everywhere. And there's a stairway, so there's the stairs going into the school. So the stairs are, and right next to the stairs is a ramp. Okay. And there's all the little kids waiting to get into school, and looks like a maintenance person is there shoveling snow. And so the little guy with the ramp in the wheelchair says, "Hey, when are you?" So the guy is shoveling the ramp, and the little kid in the chair says, "Hey, when are you going to shovel the ramp?" And the shoveler says, "Well, I'll get to it as soon as I'm done with the stairs, so the kids can get in." And the little guy in the chair says, "But if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in." Ah, how simple. How simple. And that's just what we call universal design, where if um, yes, it's good for people with disabilities, but it allows access for everybody. So yeah, if you clear the ramp, we can all get in. I love,
Well,
yeah, it's great.
well,
From
you
kids.
you know, that's a transformational image. It
Yeah,
really is, and I've told that a couple of times since we have met, and every time people's eyes just go, oh,
yeah.
yeah. And we talked about also having a new set of eyes when we go into places and checking out. If I get a little older, can I come here?
Well, that's right. And we think about things, access for people with disabilities. If we all live long enough, guess what? Those accommodations are for everybody, and that's what we have to remember.
I talked to you about the fact that on these podcasts, we have these newsletters, and asked you if you had a particular prayer or song, and you did. Now we can't play it now, but we'll put it in our newsletter. But I'd like for you to talk about it and tell us why. Well, I think after you talk about it, we'll know why it hits your heart.
Yeah. Well, I guess a song can be a prayer. Anything can be a prayer, can't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And so I chose Finlandia, and and I'm not like, "This is my song, oh God of all the nations." I'm not going to sing anymore, but I bet you recognize it. But it talks about my land, my country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight shines on clover leaf and pine. But other hearts in other lands are beating. And in other countries, skies are as blue as mine, and they have sunlight and pine. What it reminds me of is I've had so much opportunity to be involved in sport on the international level. And that song just really touches me. It reminds me so much of the people that I've met, the places that I've been, that sport has brought me to, and how sport has united us. I might be from the States, but my friends from Greece or from Germany or from Sweden, wherever, Korea, Japan, it's sport that brings us together, no matter what our home country is. And so that song, that prayer, speaks to me about the power of sport and about how sport can, and I know the word sport's not in there, but it can unite us. And it reminds us, I think, of what we share in common, how much we share in common, no matter where we're from. And so to me, it's very powerful. Sometimes for me, they'll sing it like at church, or I'll listen to it online. And I'll cry a little bit because it really touches me. It really did, because I feel the presence of the others who I have had a good opportunity to have experiences with and to meet along the way of my life. And a lot of that is is due to sport.
Mhm. I saw a little boy the other day at a coffee group that I belong to. He came into the cafe with the biggest smile on his face. And I turned to him and I said, "What happened to you? You look so happy." And he said, "I'm on the cornhole team and we won."
Ah, there we go. I love it. I love it. And there's two elements to that made him happy. Yeah, he won. Okay. But the first thing he said was, I'm on the cornhole team.
Yeah.
And that, he didn't say, hey, we won our cornhole. I'm on the team and we won.
Yes,
I think there's a message there.
I do too.
Yeah, cool.
Well, you certainly have informed, empowered, and transformed us.
Well, thank you.
I thank you so much. I wish I were in one of your classes, like sports governance or international sport or management of professional baseball. You teach that too?
Yes, I do, because I'm a huge baseball person. And so I teach that one as well. Yeah. And they're
Okay.
they're all a lot of fun. And you would be welcome in any of
Well,
them.
thank you very much. I have to go check out the University of Louisville online, right?
Absolutely. Go Cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go what? Go
Go
Cards.
Cards. Yeah, go
Yes.
Cards with the
Okay.
Cardinals. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much. We're going to give our audience one challenge to a call to action of what do we think they could be doing as individuals or in their community to advance sports and human rights.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like I mentioned, this is not just about elite sport, but it's also about what happens on a community level. Have a look around your communities. See what kind of activities there are, especially for young people, that involve sport, that are inclusive activities, where boys and girls and kids with disabilities, everyone can play together. It doesn't have to be all about winning. It's about being, again, part of a team. We have here in Louisville. I'm fortunate enough to be on the board of directors of what we call the Miracle League of Louisville. And what that is, and there's Miracle Leagues all over the country, it is baseball. So you see, here's my baseball love. Baseball for young people with disabilities. And you see kids with whether in wheelchairs, kids, brittle bone kids who are in Special Olympics, all playing together. Okay, but it's a community event. So look around your communities, look around where you live, and see if there's somewhere that you can get involved and help promote, sport as a human right for everyone, no matter what the age. You can also look at, sport for people who are older, whatever it might be. But there just tends to be a lot more activities for young people. So have a look. There's something for everybody. I'm telling you. Just have a look around. You'll know your communities and you'll know your communities and where their needs are and identify those. See how sport maybe could play a part in advancing life in your community.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mary Hums. You
You're
have a
welcome.
blessed day. Have a
All
blessed
right.
day.
You as well. And thank you to all the listeners who invited us in with this topic today. Now, everybody take care now.
Bye-bye.